and welcome to Get the Table, another wrestling roundtable discussion podcast with myself, Adam Wilborn, and the Dadley Boyz of WhatCulture here to discuss another burning wrestling issue. And that issue today is how to solve the Bray Wyatt problem. Michael Hanford, what is the Bray Wyatt problem?
Well, careful.
Yeah, the Bray Wyatt problem, just to make it clear to people who are coming at this podcast and thinking we're already taking a dump on this return, is absolutely not the return. That went down amazingly well at Extreme Rules. I think everybody was pretty much unanimous in their praise of the White Rabbit teases and the fact that this felt like the spooky version of the CM Punk viral thing from last year. The Bray Wyatt problem is that for nearly 10 years, WWE haven't figured out how to book Bray Wyatt. He debuted in 2013 on the main roster, having existed a little bit longer than that in NXT, and people immediately got very excited about a Wail and Mercy type figure, a cult leader, somebody that could easily be sort of transposed into sports entertainment and make just enough sense with a little bit of a darkness, goth leaning that might be able to replace The Undertaker, because we were always looking for a new Undertaker. And then they almost immediately screwed it up. He was made to look like a bit of a clown. He couldn't really beat Kane in a match that he decided the terms of. And eventually that just becomes the death and destruction of version 1 of Bray Wyatt. So he gets rebuilt as the Fiend. And yet again, everybody is as excited for Bray Wyatt round 2. This time we're going to get it right. And then they screw the Fiend up after a month on the main roster. And it just keeps happening like that. I don't know if Triple H is going to do things differently, but the hope of, well, just about everything he's attempted in WWE seems to be powerful with Wyatt too. He's getting one last chance to get it right.
Like he's
a monk. There's a Fiend amongst us.
I think we've let him in.
I think we've let him in. That's what it is. It's not QR codes. It's beeps.
Just to echo that, right? I do not want to be the snarky dickhead who spoils everyone's fun by saying that, you know what, the Bray Wyatt, the character was terrible, it was cringe, it made no sense in the context of WWE, and it was a complete rotten failure. That's not inaccurate, however. I don't personally like supernatural gimmickry in wrestling, but I would be an idiot and a bad analyst if I was to dare suggest that his return didn't go down amazingly well. The viral marketing campaign wasn't remarkably clever and very successful. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean a lot of people haven't. I made a snarky joke on another podcast about how no one was asking for Papa Shango to come back. Literally 9 years after the character was first revealed to be not particularly effective, right? That speaks so much about the literal cult that is Wyndham, Wyatt, Fiend, whatever. People are besotted with the idea of Bray Wyatt. If they weren't, despite 9 years of people either being despondent at how it was mishandled or kind of laughing at the fact that it was a bit silly, 9 full years of people being in love with the idea of Bray Wyatt. The key difference this time around is that people, judging by the reaction to the viral marketing campaign, judging by that series of monster pops at Extreme Rules, firmly believe that Triple H has got a significantly better chance of manifesting and making something of this absolutely alluring concept. The problem with Bray Wyatt is that he lost loads. He can teleport to the ring, but he can't pin someone's shoulders to the mat for 3 seconds. The problem with Bray Wyatt, if he is this guy with mind control at least, or actual supernatural powers at most, you have to go all the way in. I'm not saying win the world title. He has to have a push similar to Roman Reigns in the heel role from 2020 to 2022. They have to absolutely go all the way in, make him invincible. In the meantime, think and really dedicate your creative to the babyface who's going to beat him in the end after all this time. He has to win and win and win and win and win. Otherwise, it's so much worse to beat Bray Wyatt than it is to beat literally any other wrestler, because he has these powers. He has this aura. He has this sort of energy as the big dark overlord of WWE. If you just beat him, it just makes no sense. And that kind of feeds into, I guess, the next talking point.
Well, yeah, I want to talk about how WWE should book him. But first and foremost, we know now, obviously, with the news coming out today, he's going to be on the SmackDown brand.
Yep.
He's going to potentially even show up on SmackDown this week. Who's the first person he should go after?
He should go after Drew McIntyre. I've made this point quite often. Drew McIntyre is cooked as a babyface. He was kind of cooked as a babyface after Clash at the Castle. It would be a miracle if they can get Drew McIntyre in the babyface guys as hot as he was before Clash at the Castle. That's going to be really hard because you've already tugged at the heartstrings for his genuinely incredible story. People don't believe in him the same way. He's now being used as a device to get Karrion Kross, another major project, over. But he's retained just enough credibility that if Bray Wyatt targets him and beats him, it's not a waste of time. It's Drew. He's been a massive star, former WWE champion. But the idea being that he's probably going to turn heel at some point, or he has to. So the timing's right for Drew because he can absorb a loss in the face role because the face role isn't very long for this world. The issue with Drew is that part of his jocular appeal is that he does like to own the room. He does like to wisecrack a little bit. Part of booking Bray Wyatt to take him seriously. And look, I know Roddy Piper on commentary sometimes took the piss out of The Undertaker, right? You can't do that. The Undertaker prevailed. He was over in spite of it. But you can't have people doing little pithy digs at Bray Wyatt or trying to cut jokes. He has to be taken seriously. You have to sell fear of him. He can't be even adjacent to comedic material. So that's the only issue with the way that they script the Drew McIntyre character. But I think he's as good a first scalp as any to rebuild him.
Yeah, I think we're unanimous here when you talk about it. The fact that Bray's first target should be Drew. We even predicted that on the Extreme Rules preview, saying that like if he's not going to do what he eventually turned out doing, which is just show up at the end of the show, if he is going to interfere in a match, it was the perfect thing to do because, as we talked about when we were referencing Bray Wyatt's last reinvention as The Fiend, Drew McIntyre is very much in that sort of Finn Balor role from back then.
Yeah, it's not fortuitous because ideally you want to plan for these things, but there are certainly situations where if you involve in a mega heel, and it's difficult to nail down Bray Wyatt's alignment, but like by the letter of the law, he'd be a heel, I guess. That you've got a baby face that you can kill for the benefit of that heel. It doesn't always work that way, and sometimes you have to sacrifice one. Drew McIntyre is not a sacrifice, and I think that's why he seems like such the perfect choice, because ultimately what killed The Fiend was that they didn't want to make Seth Rollins a sacrifice. He couldn't just, like, Seth Rollins loses in 2 minutes to The Fiend. Yes, it would probably have been rushed to put the belt on The Fiend, but you've done it. You've absolutely committed to it, and instead they didn't want to sacrifice him. Drew McIntyre is absolutely not that, just as Finn Balor wasn't that, just as Kane wasn't that, even though they wouldn't go all in.
Kane was never anything.
Back in 2013. So it's the circumstances have been made right for Bray Wyatt to get off to the best possible start. And again, just to go back to this faith in Triple H's control of him and the characters that he's going to line him up against, it's, it could be argued, I think, that, like, we've made no secret of this, right? We're not particularly Bray Wyatt fans, but will give...
Wilborn is.
I'll give the benefit of the doubt to any act that gets a reaction like they did at Extreme Rules, and certainly the benefit of the doubt undermines the merchandise money that character used to make. Those Fiend belts, man, $4,000 or whatever it was. The people that were into him would spend money to be into him. So in a way, the firing of him might, to me, have been like, well, maybe cut bait, this just hasn't worked. But there were probably WWE hardcores that were furious about that felt like, well, Vince McMahon, like, he let us down loads of times over 20 years. Vince McMahon has never let me down before. You sacked The Fiend. Vince McMahon, you've let me down. So Triple H has probably brought them back into the fold as well. So it pays.
Reigns seemed to bear that out.
Well, yeah. Like, we've often talked about casual fans. There are Fiend fans that were probably waiting for Bray Wyatt to return and now want their emotional investment and potentially financial investment rewarded. So someone like a Drew McIntyre shows commitment to the cause as well. It rewards those fans that have come back for Raw, that have bought tickets for Raw, that have, tuned into Extreme Rules, bought the White Rabbit t-shirts, that you haven't just done this with some sort of like false hope. This isn't a false dawn this time. You're going to get your big win and you're going to get your big moments.
You are partially right, Sige. I was a fan of The Fiend, I'd say, longer than most people in the WhatCulture office. But I myself was tearing my hair out and so angry when they booked that match for the world title at Hell in a Cell.
One of the worst moments in WWE history.
Because before it even happened, I was like, this is ridiculous. Why not? Because it was fairly quick after he'd beaten Balor, wasn't it? It was pretty much the next thing, effectively. And you're like, you've got Hell in a Cell. You've got a character effectively from hell. Just have him kill someone in a cell match. Anyone except the world champion, because neither person can afford to lose this. And in the end, they had to do the bollocks that they did, of course. So in terms of this new version of Bray Wyatt, how did WWE book him? And not just for the first month in a feud with Drew McIntyre. Looking forward, should he even involve himself with a world title?
Well, absolutely not. No, because it does create awkward questions that you don't want to yet have to answer. Basically, Bray Wyatt, in my opinion, should involve himself in the world title when that idea becomes undeniable, when it becomes the point where everybody's calling for it and WWE need to have their finger on the pulse and need to be listening and need to now feel, yes, now is the right time. I can't tell you when that is. It's just going to feel right and they have to act. Sidgwick made a comparison to Roman Reigns before in terms of Bray Wyatt's schedule, and I think there is something to that, not just for Bray, but for the mooted Wyatt Six or a group of people that were maybe alluded to in the teasers. One of the benefits of the Bloodline, other than being a cool act, is that you've got other people to work that are working kind of on behalf of Roman Reigns. Here's this Usos main event because Roman doesn't really work TV, but the Bloodline are on the show, so it's kind of like Roman's here. If there is indeed to be a stable or people that are converted by this new version of Bray Wyatt, Overlord, that word he used, he kind of doesn't have to work that often while he's got other people working on his behalf. It means he can appear on television. It means that the idea of Bray is always there, but for argument's sake, Joe Gacy, let's say, right? Joe Gacy is one of his guys, one of his minions, whatever. He's there working regularly, and Bray Wyatt is the big bad. Like, somebody has like had the troubles with Joe Gacy, but got past Joe Gacy, and now, well, right, you've unlocked me now. I'm going to fight you. And it's going to be a big 4 pay-per-view, and everybody's got really hyped because he's never wrestles on Raw, and he only appears on SmackDown, and I cannot believe he's in the ring. What's he going to look like in the ring? So you get all that speculation brand new all over again in a cycle of maybe every 3 to 4 months. I'd have Bray Wyatt enter the Royal Rumble because the idea of Bray Wyatt going and picking a ball out of a tumbler is absurd. You know, you can just about get past him grabbing a headlock, but the idea of Bray Wyatt entering into the normal, like, cut and thrust of being a WWE superstar does not work. And we've learned that over and over and over again. You have to think different this time. You have to think outside of the box-like structure.
Yeah, in terms of having him on telly and, you know, appearing, I'm not suggesting that he doesn't always, you know, he doesn't have to be there once a month or whatever it may be. But Hamlet's right, and we always talk about this. You're a spooky, supernatural, mind-controlling character who has to grab a headlock and catch their breath. How would you book Wyatt, Sidge, in terms of, would you have him do limited amount of matches?
The idea of Bray Wyatt going to wrestling school, again, that's instantly when this evaporates. I think for a lot of people, the idea of The Undertaker being a wrestler worked because we were all children at the time and we just didn't know about wrestling school or anything daft like that. As I said, with a character like Bray Wyatt, how he expresses this fact that he casts a spell of fear, however it's articulated, whether he has actual magical powers that are expressed in pretty silly or, you know, cool or whatever theatrical stunts, whether it's that or whether he's just got such an aura as this menacing, scary guy who can use the power of his mind and intimidate people, whether it's one of those two things, it doesn't matter, you have to go all the way. And therein lies the problem with Bray Wyatt all along for me in terms of the booking. Again, not personally my thing. I will never begrudge anyone for enjoying it. I simply sometimes don't understand. But there is something in doing the correct version of something I'm not into, and I would still absolutely respect it. Absolutely respect it. He has to go all in. He has to win every single match he's in, because otherwise, what kind of evil wizard, scary monster guy is he?
Definitively as well, not stealing one or distraction.
Not steal one, he can't distract. He has to be this living monster who can strike fear into the hearts of all of his opponents. I don't even think match quality is necessarily that much of a concern, and we know we haven't really seen that many great, undisputedly heated, non-gimmicked Bray Wyatt singles matches. It just hasn't happened. There's a big library of incredibly loud Bray Wyatt matches where he didn't have to sell or a falls count anywhere or a last man standing to work with. I'll watch them. Send them to me. But ultimately, I don't think work rate matters to the WWE audience. If so, they probably would have gravitated to New Japan or AEW at this point. So match quality for me isn't a concern. People want the theatre. People want the production. People want the big-time feeling. And you absolutely get that with Bray Wyatt. Ultimately, he has to win decisively and frequently to substantiate that elusive idea, and goddamn is it so compelling to people, and they have to go all the way. You can't half-arse a character like that from the perspective of that character. They have to have signed, at great expense, someone they consider the next big thing in their programming. Otherwise, it simply doesn't work.
Finally, a handful of sort of alluded to the Wyatt Six. Who are the Wyatt Six, Sidge?
I think the Wyatt Six exists because he changed his art to Wyndham 6, presumably because Wyndham 1, Wyndham 2, Wyndham 3, Wyndham 4, and Wyndham 5 were already taken on Twitter.
Barry, Kendall.
So hang on. So there's Bray Wyatt, right? And the puppets come to life. So there's Wyatt, there's Sister Abigail, there's the Buzzard, there's
Huskus the Pig Boy.
Huskus the Pig Boy.
The Dancing Fiend. Fiend's back.
So the
guardrail.
Right, okay. Sorry.
Abby the Witch.
Right, Bray Wyatt.
Yeah.
The Fiend.
Yeah.
That looked like someone I saw on the queue at Clash at the Castle cosplaying. But
Bin bag
regardless,
Fiend.
yes. Sister Abigail.
Well, Abby the Witch, but yes.
Abby the Witch. Hell, sorry, I got my law wrong.
Gotta get it right.
Huskus the Pig Boy and Mercy the Buzzard.
Yeah.
And Rambling Rabbit.
So there is
Measure
6.
Yeah.
They're like extras. I don't think they're talent. They could be like running buddies that can do interference and distractions and all the rest of it. Look, will you have the stable that incorporates Dexter Loomis and Karrion Kross and loads of like goth thumbnails come true? I just can't see it. I don't think he needs them yet.
Conga line.
Conga line, Phil, thanks.
Thanks, Phil. They can take it.
No way Jose's in the Wyatt Six.
They can take it in that direction if they so wish.
No way. Oh, Bray.
Maybe. I don't know. These guys aren't like, it's not like Joe Gacy under a mask. I think they're just extras who at some point might interfere or terrorize people on screen. I just don't think it's going to be a big deal. Sorry.
Yeah, Undertaker wasn't working trios with the Creatures of the Night, was he?
No.
I don't get me wrong. I'm more, like I say, I'm more of a fan of this whole thing than a lot of people at WhatCulture. But even I think it'd be funny to have like, join us on Friday night where it's Chad Gable versus Huskus the Big Boy.
Like, as silly as that sounds, because I don't think that either. I don't think these characters as they are. I think maybe if people are wanting to assign names, it's not that they're under the mask, it's that they represent, you know, that one person's going to be coming in. We're not asking them to reinvent the wheel here. Like every single character, like every single story, just put some rules on a whiteboard and stick to them. That's what matters the most with Bray Wyatt, and that is no different to Roman Reigns. That's how you should book everybody. That's how you should book every single story. You got rules to this. What do we do with this one? What do we not do with this one? And absolutely to the letter stick with it. Because how many times did they set rules and then tear them up with Bray? So if you want the Mercy the Buzzard in a Hawaiian shirt, it must be Happy Corbin. Like if you want Happy Corbin to be one like a new cult follower, fine. He fell on hard times again, and Bray Wyatt reached out to him, and he was like, yeah, why not? Okay, like, I'll take it. But then don't betray that. Don't just have Baron Corbin go out there and lose every week, because what was the point of joining the cult if he hasn't actually empowered you? It's that sounds so obvious, but they would do it. Like that Inferno match against Kane had Harper and Rowan, like, throwing a towel over the fire. So you're scared of the flames then? Like, why have you booked this match? See what I mean? And that's night one. It's just... like, if you're going to have a rule, just stick to it. And if you're going to have these characters, yeah, commit. At all costs, commit. Because there will be some costs. A few traditional wrestlers and storylines may suffer. But there is financial evidence to suggest that it might be worth it if you do commit.
And I don't necessarily like, just one more thing, the idea of how we should keep Bray Wyatt out of the title picture. Why? Why did he go to wrestling school? Why does he want to be in it? So that's another problem. But yeah, commit all the way. Don't do it because it won't work.
Intriguing to see how things go forward, especially on this week's SmackDown. Let us know your thoughts on the whole Bray Wyatt situation and the Wyatt Six in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. Well, actually, you can follow all three of us. You can follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael Hamflett.
You can follow Michael Sidgwick at
Please be nice. It's not personally my thing, but I'm not denying that it can't work if done well. That's all I'm saying. At M. Sidgwick.
And you can follow me at Adam Wilborn. Follow us all at WhatCulture WWE, as I said. But for now, this has been Get the Table. My thanks to the Dadley Boyz. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.